March 1918, World War I was raging across the Atlantic. German U-boats stalked the seas, and naval convoys were constantly under threat. But one disappearance would become the largest loss of life in U.S. naval history not involving combat. A massive cargo ship, 309 men on board, no distress signal, no wreckage, no survivors. The ship was called USS Cyclops, and over a century later, its disappearance remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever recorded. Tonight, we dive deep into the strange story. The ship that vanished without a trace, the USS Cyclops was launched in 1910 and built for a specific mission. It was a colliery ship designed to transport coal to power naval fleets. But the Cyclops was no ordinary supply ship. The ship measured 540 feet long, over 19,000 tons. Capable of carrying 10,000 tons of cargo, it was one of the largest in the fleet. In January 1918, the Cyclops arrived in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Its mission was to load a cargo critical for making steel, manganese ore. But even before leaving port, there were problems. Reports suggested one engine had mechanical trouble and the cargo may have been poorly balanced. On March 3, 1918, the Cyclops arrived in Barbados. This would become the last confirmed sighting of the ship. Some sailors described the ship sitting lower in the water than usual. Still, the ship departed for Baltimore. It never arrived. The ship never sent a single distress signal. Search efforts began. Ships scoured the Atlantic. But nothing was found. Attention soon turned to the ship's captain, Captain George W. Worley. Originally from Germany, he was described as harsh and unpredictable. Could the captain have deliberately delivered the ship to the enemy? There was no proof. No German records mentioned capturing the Cyclops. Theories include structural failure. If the heavy manganese ore shifted during rough seas, it could have caused the ship to break apart suddenly. Then there is the Bermuda Triangle theory. The disappearance occurred within this mysterious region, but historians view this as unlikely. Two sister ships, the Proteus and Nereus, also disappeared decades later. This suggests the Cyclops may have suffered a catastrophic structural flaw. More than 100 years later, the USS Cyclops has never been found. Somewhere in the depths lies the answer to what happened. 309 men vanished, and the sea never told their story. In July 1909, a massive passenger ship set sail along the dangerous coast of South Africa. On board were 211 passengers and crew. The ship was modern, powerful, and considered safe. Its name was RMS Waratah. But somewhere along its journey between Durban and Cape Town, the ship disappeared. No distress call, no survivors, no wreckage. More than a century later, the fate of the Waratah remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever recorded. Tonight, we uncover the strange story of the ship that vanished without a trace. The RMS Waratah was launched in 1908 by the Blue Anchor Line, a British shipping company. It was designed to travel between Europe and Australia, carrying passengers and cargo. At the time, the Waratah was considered state-of-the-art. The ship measured 465 feet long, nearly 10,000 tons. Inside, the ship offered luxurious accommodations. Passengers enjoyed elegant dining rooms, spacious cabins, promenade decks overlooking the ocean. It was marketed as both fast and comfortable. But some sailors would later question something far more important: its stability at sea. In July 1909, the Waratah departed from Durban, South Africa. Its destination was Cape Town. The ship carried a mix of passengers returning to Britain, workers and travelers, crew members operating the vessel. Among them was a passenger named Claude Sawyer. His story would later become one of the strangest parts of the mystery, because Sawyer claimed to have experienced terrifying visions while aboard the ship. Visions that convinced him something terrible was about to happen. Claude Sawyer told other passengers he had seen a vision of a man with a sword standing above the ship. In the vision, the ship rolled violently in rough seas. Sawyer became so disturbed that he decided to leave the ship. He left at Durban before the next leg of the journey. Later, he would claim he felt certain the Waratah was doomed. At the time, most people dismissed the story as imagination. But after the ship disappeared, Sawyer's warning became chilling. The Waratah left Durban on July 26, 1909. Several ships were traveling along the same route. One of them, the Clan McIntyre, reported seeing the Waratah at sea. The ship appeared to be struggling in rough waves. Witnesses described the vessel rolling heavily from side to side. But after that sighting, the Waratah was never seen again. When the ship failed to arrive in Cape Town, authorities realized something was terribly wrong. One of the largest search operations of the early 20th century began. Ships scanned thousands of miles of ocean. Rescue crews searched the dangerous wild coast of South Africa, an area notorious for shipwrecks. But they found nothing, no debris, no lifeboats. No bodies. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually the search ended. The Waratah and everyone on board had simply vanished. Over the decades, investigators proposed several explanations. First, stability problems. Some passengers complained the Waratah rolled excessively. If it encountered a storm, it might have capsized suddenly. Second, rogue wave. The waters along the South African coast are known for extreme waves. A massive rogue wave could have struck the ship without warning. Third, structural failure. If the ship's design had weaknesses, rough seas might have caused catastrophic damage. Fourth, fire or explosion. Some experts suggested a possible cargo fire. But without wreckage, no theory can be confirmed. Today, more than 115 years later, the RMS Waratah has never been found. Despite multiple modern search expeditions, the wreck remains hidden somewhere in the vast ocean. For the families of the 211 people on board, there was never closure. Only questions: was it a storm, a design flaw, or something far more unusual? Until the wreck is discovered, the Waratah will remain one of the great unsolved mysteries of the sea. A ship that sailed into the ocean and never came back. In October 1931, a cargo ship became trapped in the frozen Arctic Ocean. Its crew believed the vessel would soon be crushed by the ice, so they abandoned it. But days later, something unbelievable happened. The ship was gone. Not sunk, not destroyed, just missing. Over the next 38 years, people across the Arctic reported sightings of the same ship drifting through the ice. A ghost ship with no crew, no captain, and no destination. This is the incredible story of the SS Baychimo, one of the most famous ghost ships in history. The SS Baychimo was built in 1920 in Sweden. Originally named Angermanelfen, the ship was later purchased by the Hudson's Bay Company. Its job was to deliver supplies to remote trading posts across the Arctic. Every summer, the ship traveled through dangerous northern waters. The ship carried food, tools, trade goods, and fur cargo. These journeys were extremely difficult, filled with floating sea ice and violent storms. Only the toughest ships could survive these conditions. The Baychimo became one of the most reliable supply ships operating in the far north, but its final voyage would turn it into a legend. In 1931, the Baychimo began its regular supply run through the Arctic. By late summer, the ship had successfully delivered cargo. But as autumn approached, the Arctic sea ice began forming earlier than expected. Near the coast of Alaska, the Baychimo became trapped in thick pack ice. For days, the crew waited for the ice to break. But the weather only grew worse. Temperatures dropped. Blizzards swept across the frozen sea. The crew realized they might not escape before winter arrived. Eventually, a powerful Arctic storm struck the region. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The captain feared the ice would soon crush the ship's hull, so he ordered the crew to abandon the vessel. The sailors moved supplies onto the ice and built a temporary camp nearby. After the storm passed, they returned to check on the ship. But the Baychimo had disappeared. The ice field where it had been trapped was now empty. The ship had somehow broken free from the ice and drifted away. Several days later, a hunter spotted the Baychimo drifting about 45 miles away. A small group boarded the ship and recovered valuable cargo. But the ice was too unstable to safely tow the vessel. So they left it again. They assumed it would soon sink or be destroyed by ice. But the Arctic had other plans. For decades, explorers and hunters reported sightings. Sometimes it appeared trapped in sea ice, slowly drifting through fog, completely abandoned. Yet it somehow never sank. The ghost ship continued appearing across the Arctic for nearly 40 years. In 1933, a group of Inuit hunters boarded the vessel. They explored the empty ship before leaving. In 1934, a group attempted to tow the Baychimo to safety, but a storm forced them to abandon it. Again, the ship vanished. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1969. An Inuit hunter reported seeing the ship drifting near the Alaskan coast. After that, the ghost ship disappeared forever. Today, historians believe the Baychimo eventually sank somewhere in the Arctic Ocean, but the exact location of the wreck remains unknown. Unlike most ships, the Baychimo survived decades without a crew, drifting thousands of miles, becoming one of the most famous ghost ships in maritime history. The SS Baychimo's story feels almost impossible, a ship that refused to disappear. For decades, it wandered through the frozen seas like a phantom. And somewhere beneath the ice today, it may still rest, frozen in time. In the autumn of 1641, a heavily loaded treasure ship sailed toward England. Its cargo was extraordinary: gold, silver, precious jewels, and treasure worth billions of dollars in today's money. The ship was called Merchant Royal, but somewhere off the coast of England, disaster struck. The vessel sank beneath the waves, taking its unimaginable treasure with it. For nearly 400 years, treasure hunters have searched for the wreck. Yet the ship and its fortune remains lost. This is the story of the Merchant Royal, one of the richest shipwrecks never found. The Merchant Royal was a 17th century English merchant ship, built to travel long distances across dangerous seas. It carried valuable cargo between Europe and Spanish territories. Ships like the Merchant Royal were essential to international trade, but they were also tempting targets for pirates, privateers, enemy nations. Despite these dangers, the Merchant Royal completed several successful voyages. By 1641, it had become known as a reliable cargo vessel, but on its final journey, the ship would carry something far more valuable than usual: treasure, a massive shipment belonging to Spanish merchants. Among the treasure were reportedly 100,000 pounds of gold, 400 bars of Mexican silver, and chests filled with rare coins. In modern value, historians estimate the treasure could be worth over $1.5 billion. The Merchant Royal was chosen for the job, but the ship had already faced trouble, and those problems were about to become deadly. During its journey, the Merchant Royal encountered severe storms. The ship reportedly began to take on water. Pumps were used to remove the flooding, but the situation continued to worsen. The ship stopped briefly in Cadiz, Spain, where repairs were attempted, but the damage could not be completely fixed. Despite the risks, the Merchant Royal continued toward England. The crew hoped to reach port before the ship failed. They would never make it. In September 1641, disaster struck. Somewhere near the coast of Cornwall, the Merchant Royal began flooding uncontrollably. The captain realized the vessel was doomed. Most of the crew escaped using smaller boats, but the treasure remained on board. Within hours, the Merchant Royal sank into the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, taking one of the greatest fortunes ever lost at sea. After the sinking, attempts were made to recover the treasure, but 17th century technology made deep-sea recovery almost impossible. Over time, the story of the Merchant Royal became legendary. Treasure hunters called it the El Dorado of the seas. Many expeditions have searched the waters near Cornwall. Some believe the ship rests more than 300 feet underwater. Even today, the Merchant Royal continues to attract treasure hunters using advanced tools like sonar scanning and underwater robots. Several groups believe they may be close, but the ocean floor is vast, and centuries of currents may have buried the ship. The treasure remains hidden, waiting somewhere in the darkness. Nearly 400 years later, it remains one of the greatest lost treasures. Billions in gold and silver may still lie on the ocean floor. In 1845, two British ships sailed into the Arctic on one of the most ambitious exploration missions in history. Their goal was to find the legendary Northwest Passage, a sea route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The ships were called HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. On board were 129 officers and crew, led by the experienced explorer Sir John Franklin. The expedition was well equipped. Food supplies for 3 years, advanced technology, and some of the most skilled sailors in the British Navy. Yet none of them would ever return. The ships vanished into the frozen Arctic, remaining a mystery for more than a century. In May 1845, the expedition departed from England. The mission was simple in theory, but incredibly dangerous. Find a navigable route through the ice. European nations believed this passage would create a faster trade route to Asia, finding it would bring enormous prestige to the British Admiralty. Franklin's ships had been specially modified for polar travel, featuring reinforced hulls, steam engines, and advanced heating systems. In July 1845, two whaling ships spotted Erebus and Terror waiting near the ice edge in Baffin Bay. The crews waved as they passed. No one knew it would be the last time the ships were ever seen by Europeans. After that encounter, the expedition disappeared into the wilderness. By 1848, concern grew. 3 years with no letters, no sightings, and no survivors. The British government launched a massive search effort. They discovered scattered clues, abandoned camps, equipment left behind, and eventually, human remains, but the ships were nowhere to be found. On Beachy Island, teams found a small campsite and 3 graves. The sailors had died during the expedition's first winter. Later, a written note revealed that Sir John Franklin had died in June 1847, and the surviving crew had abandoned the ships in 1848. More than 100 men were now stranded. They attempted to travel south on foot, dragging heavy sleds across the frozen landscape. Starvation, exhaustion, and extreme cold took their toll. Investigations even revealed signs that some survivors resorted to cannibalism in desperation. For 160 years, the ships remained hidden. Then in 2014 and 2016, the wrecks of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were finally discovered. The ships were remarkably well preserved by the cold. These discoveries helped confirm the tragic details of the expedition's final days. The Franklin expedition is one of history's most haunting stories. A desperate struggle against the harshest environment on Earth. The ice kept their secret for over a century. Even today, some of those secrets remain frozen in time. Subscribe for more incredible true stories.